Bankless Nation, not every single day is launch day for a protocol. The Eigenlayer token details are here. Don't call it an airdrop. This is a stake drop. That's because that's the only thing that you can do with your Eigenlayer tokens right out of the gate. Ryan, how you doing today, my man?
I'm good. I'm pretty excited about this stake drop we got going on. So what are we in for? What's happening?
We're going to cover all of the details. There's been some feedback on Twitter. Some people have some questions about how this whole thing works. We're bringing on Sreeram and Robert. Robert, the new director of the Eigenlayer Foundation, on the show today to answer all these questions and unpack the announcement details. 15% of the total supply of Eigen distributed over multiple seasons. Season 1 starts today. That's what all the news is about, with 5% of the supply, along with one of the most sophisticated sets of smart contracts on-chain on Mainnet. Eigen is not your typical ERC20 token. It's got this feature called Intersubjective Forking, which is a mouthful. And we're going to unpack exactly what that is and how this actually increases the scope of what Eigenlayer can provide security for. And so, like I said, in addition to the token details getting released, we're also getting the Eigen Foundation with a new director, Robert Drost, who we're going to introduce here in just a second. So let's go ahead and get right into the details of Season 1 of the Eigenlayer stake drop with Sreeram and Robert. But first, a moment to talk about some of these fantastic sponsors that make this show possible. If you want a crypto trading experience backed by world-class security and award-winning support teams, then head over to KRAKEN, one of the longest-standing and most secure crypto platforms in the world. KRAKEN is on a journey to build a more accessible, inclusive, and fair financial system, making it simple and secure for everyone, everywhere, to trade crypto. KRAKEN's intuitive trading tools are designed to grow with you, empowering you to make your first or your 100th trade in just a few clicks. And there's an award-winning client support team available 24/7 to help you along the way, along with a whole range of educational guides, articles, and videos. With products and features like KRAKEN Pro and KRAKEN NFT Marketplace and a seamless app to bring it all together, it's really the perfect place to get your complete crypto experience. So check out the simple, secure, and powerful way for everyone to trade crypto, whether you're a complete beginner or a seasoned pro. Go to kraken.com/bankless to see what crypto can be. Not investment advice. Crypto trading involves risk of loss. Have you heard about Safe? They're not just pioneers in crypto custody, they're also leading the transition to the world of smart accounts. With Safe, managing your crypto has never been smarter or safer. They've recently passed $100 billion in total value secured and are now deployed everywhere with over 15 supported networks. But that's not all. Safe is revolutionizing the game with their full compatibility with ERC-4337, making embedding wallets super easy to integrate into your daily crypto activities. And for the crypto enthusiasts out there, Safe has something special. The Safe Pass Activity Rewards Program. It's a fantastic way to engage and earn rewards, launching just after SafeDAO voted in favor of Safe token transferability. So what are you waiting for? Head over to safe.global, sign up for the Safe Pass Activity Rewards Program, and don't forget to check out SafeCon during Berlin Blockchain Week, where the future of smart accounts is unfolding in real life. Click the link in the show notes to secure your spot today and be a part of the transition that's setting a new standard in the world of custody. Launching a token? Worried about the IRS? Talk to Toku for 5 minutes to learn how to save hundreds of thousands of dollars for you, your team, and your investors. Now, if you do an initial consultation, Toku will cover the cost of your token valuation, which is what you need for your launch. So don't wait. Reach out to the team right now at team@toku.com. That's team@toku.com. Bankless Nation, we're here with Sreeram Kannan, the co-founder of Eigenlayer. Sreeram, welcome back to the show.
Hey, David. Hi, Ryan. Excited to be here.
And joining Sreeram today is Robert Drost, the new director of the Eigenlayer Foundation. Robert, also welcome to Bankless.
Hey, I'm so happy to be here. Thanks for having me on.
So big day today, guys. This is not an airdrop. This is a stake drop. First, we have to explain what that is. So what is a stake drop, and why are we getting one? Sreeram, what's the thought behind this?
Yeah, the Eigen token is designed as a staking token in the Eigenlayer ecosystem. And a staking token allows for new functionality that ETH staking alone cannot provide. And the token's designed around this functionality. And so that's why we're calling it a stake drop, where users who participated in the protocol can now actually claim their tokens and then stake it to actually participate in providing security to new services that can then be built on top of this. So that's the high-level idea. We'll get into a lot more details.
So yeah. Eigenlayer, go for it, Robert.
I was just going to add, I mean, because people do talk about staking a lot, the token has this, I think it's a good contribution, but this technical underpinning where it is, it is a token, but it also has this ability that it can be viewed intersubjectively,
Intersubjectivity. Oh my gosh, now I can't say it.
Intersubjectively. Yeah.
At night getting ready for the airdrop.
My contribution.
Yeah, exactly. So, so that allows the token to have abilities that are harder to normally do. So it allows there to be social consensus outside, and people can organize and decide about actions that would be hard, basically impossible to tell on chain. So it adds a new element of social consensus embedded right into the protocol.
So there's been some just questions about like why is the token like frozen on chain, right? Is currently the Eigen token is non-transferable, and Eigenlayer has been in this process of slowly rolling out component after component after component, putting it on mainnet, and so like airdrop days or stake drop days are very big days in the communities of protocols. But really, from the perspective of the Eigenlayer system, this is just one more component that is now live on mainnet to really like complete the engine of the Eigenlayer system. And the next phase that's of the whole Eigenlayer system that's going online is the actual staking component of the Eigenlayer system. Hence why there's a token out there that can do one thing, which is be staked. Is that kind of the philosophy of this?
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. I think for things like data availability specifically, there's certain kinds of conditions that are really essential that you have this ability to have social consensus. That way it's known that if people are doing certain types of attacks, it could be seen. There's a good comparison of like, if you look at something like Ethereum or others, people can determine externally, they are able to put on things like hard forks and do changes. It's not entirely based on like, programmatic on chain, because the chains fundamentally can be forked. It's actually very hard to do that with the regular token, because you'd have to organize everybody agreeing there's a new version, what to do, how to upgrade. Those capabilities are programmatically in the token. And so people are able to kind of cast their decision of, oh, there's a fork happening. I think this one's valid, or I think this one's valid. So it brings this feature that used to just be on layer 1 into layer 2. So it needs a token. It doesn't need it to actually be traded on markets. Of course, at some point that will happen. But for right now, that allows the network to get started. And it's an important step. I mean, it's, I think the history of crypto has had a lot of these cases where, true believers kind of understand it takes a while to roll out things responsibly, and you take the time to do it right.
Yeah. This intersubjective forking is a mechanism that I remember Augur invoking way back in the day. And for people who are trying to still wrap their heads on what that is, think of it like a hard fork, but for the app layer. And it's really something that the Eigen token specifically is bringing into the scope of Eigenlayer to really expand the roles of what Eigenlayer security can really do. And so we have like the interests and like needs of the Eigenlayer protocol, but then we also have the token receivers on the other end of the system who are also looking for some details about like what the whole roadmap of the token is. So there are some like parameters of this stake drop. I believe 15% of the total Eigen supply is going to be stake dropped. And we are at season 1. This is the details from the announcement. We are at season 1 of the stake drop, in which the first 5% of the total supply of Eigen is being stake dropped in a non-transferable way. But that means that there are future seasons, right? And so just can we kind of run through some of the high level parameters of like how many seasons are there, what percentage of Eigen tokens per season, and just like the distribution parameters, if we can kind of just run through that.
Yeah, I think, similar to a lot of situations, if you're talking about things that are in the public markets, talking about a lot of future things, we are trying to say as much as we can without getting to a situation where, we're giving specific details on things. We do have a good plan for how we're thinking about things going forward. I think people are going to be happy with it. But in terms of specifics on, is it, 3 seasons, 2 seasons, 4 seasons? There's options on what could be done. We have an idea on what would be coming for future, but I think there's already some good discussion. We'll be giving out more information for people over time, how to be similar to before. Restaking was probably the principal thing you could do in the network. Now it's a lot richer. You have not only your E3 stake, you also have Eigens when you claim next week starting May 10th. And you'll have the option that you can go ahead and put those into staking. You can allocate them to operators. You can run them against AVSs. And so there'll be a lot richer of interactions you can do with the network. And there'll be, communication about this is considered good, or, like how to basically show that you're doing actions that are good for the network. Because that's ultimately the goal for early people, is to kind of learn that and get the network up from its wobbly feet.
Right.
Into a full programmable network.
So the snapshot for season 1 was March 15th. So of course, what that means is the parameters of season 1 are closed. But it sounds like the parameters of future seasons is still up in the air. And so we are on like a slow rollout of like this eventual full scope of the release of the token. Yeah,
by necessity, you can't speak about things until the time's coming up. We have some ideas about what's happening. We have communicated that, we're looking for ecosystem participation. We are looking for things after that date. We are going to look at things before that date. It's, one of these. I think the best is to just look at what we're publicly saying in the documents, and then that'll give you some ideas, and there'll be more communications in the coming days and weeks.
Inside of season 1, again, which is this season, there's phase 1 and phase 2. So I'm hoping we can kind of provide some clarity on these two different phases. Phase 1 has the bulk of the Eigen stake drop inside of it, and then phase 2 is accounting for like kind of these edge cases. Can you walk us through the different phases of season 1?
Absolutely. I think the first part, to talk about the principle, we originally opened up the app and people could stake either, ETH or LSTs, restake them. And the goal is very much, we like to look at the end users and, people who are actually coming into the system, and make sure that we're looking directly at what they've done, and, feeling like we're understanding, what's the right thing to do there. So we're trying very hard to do that. I think the situation that we just want to make sure that everybody gets into a good place with is, there were a couple of protocols and people that built up more complex structures on top of, around what we were doing. It's an open innovation platform. So just like the rest of crypto, people like to build up kind of interesting systems, novel systems. And we don't want to get into a position where we are looking at what somebody else intended and then figuring out something that they didn't. So the point was, we made sure that everybody is treated the same from our perspective. What we would have actually dropped onto users had they not been in these protocols, that's all being reserved. And the protocols are the ones who are going to make the decisions, because the users ultimately went into different protocols. Those protocols had policy, they have people involved in them. I think users need to wait a little bit, because those protocols were finding out some of this information necessarily close to the stake drop time. And so they need to go through, obviously if a protocol created a system, somebody put some tokens into it, they have an idea about what they were going to expect that protocol would do. And so I think people can, look to the protocols to figure out what's the kind of fair allocation from their goals. Mm-hmm. And that'll be phase 2, but it's uniform with, as if we could have figured out everybody's position in the first one, we would have done it all directly. This is just to make sure that everybody's treated fairly.
So the base case.
I think the numbers, David, just one thing. The numbers 90% and 10% maybe threw off some people. It seemed like they were round numbers. They were not like hand allocated. They just it was the outcome of a natural calculation. Yeah. And it's not exactly 90% and 10%. There is some round off and all this stuff. But the actual numbers are, somewhere in the 9.x%. And
we could actually. That's right. They came out to roughly those numbers. And, it's just sort of easy numbers to put out there. The exact ones were calculated down to specific numbers. And I guess if people are interested at some point, we can just put it out. You'll see, by May 10th, after May 10th in phase 2, you would actually see the exact numbers, but we can talk about it sooner. But like Sreeram is saying, it just happened that the numbers turned out to that. I think, people do also need to keep in mind that the way in general, when people are looking at restake points or other things, they were measured as kind of a integration of
Stakedrop day.
turned on this that's great. Balloons, why not? So there's value over time, and so the exact proportions and things you see right now are very different than looking back over a span of time. So everything is calculated based on impressions that we have from a sustained kind of commitment, and I think everyone should be happy with the end as they get more analysis.
Okay, so let me try and summarize the whole phase 1 and phase 2 of season 1, just as I understand it. The 90%, which is phase 1, which is what's happening today, is like the bulk of base case of restaking inside of Eigenlayer, which is like totally objective ETH inside of Eigenlayer per unit time. And this is like a calculus that anyone can run. And that is the bulk of cases, and that's the bulk of tokens, is 90%. And then there's been like a side of Eigenlayer that has had these derivative platforms built on top of it inside of the Ethereum app layer. And as you guys said, like a completely open platform, right? And so people started building derivatives on top of Eigenlayer, like speculation on the token, right? So some people could go long the yield, some people could go long the tokens. This was happening in Pendle, but there was a bunch of other app layers around this. And this is, and coincidentally, this is a 10 to 90 ratio. Right. Then these are just like, they just happened to end up this way, with is how much people were vanilla restaking like me in Eigenlayer. I was vanilla restaking, wasn't doing any sort of degen gambling stuff. But then some people chose to do the derivative stuff that happened to land at 90-10. And then also the reason why that second phase isn't included in the first phase is because there's a bunch of complicated math that is opinionated that you guys would prefer the app layer, the app itself, to actually make that calculation themselves, because that's their math, not your guys' math. And so it's up to, and we've seen this actually happen before in other token drops where, like if you were a solo staker with Rocket Pool or Lido, in order to receive your airdrop from Starknet, you would have to actually go to Lido or Rocket Pool to get those tokens. And so this is something that you guys, of the people that chose to speculate on the Eigen token in the DeFi world, it's now up to the DeFi layer to actually allocate the actual appropriate calculations, because they're the ones with the calculations. Is that a fair summary?
Yeah, that's a fair summary. And you captured a really key point there, which is, open innovation means that the protocols that did all these things, not attached, no guidance from us. They had interpretation, and just, people are free to do what they want. That's the big value of the crypto world, is like self-determination, self-ownership. And any agency. And so, we ended up in this situation. I think, I think it's all good. People are, like you're saying, used to it, who have been around. Maybe for some people who haven't seen it before, it is something a little bit new. But like you said, for people who just came in and followed the regular restaking and then just holding and staying on the platform, that's all treated, and that was all included in phase 1.
Can I, so just to, let me try to attempt to summarize where we've gotten this conversation, because I want folks to be crystal clear on what's just happened. All right, so there is a token now, it's called Eigen, right? EIGEN, that's a token. That is now locked. Eigenlayer has done a stake drop, not quite an airdrop, stake drop. We've talked about the contours of that. And we are in season 1 of that stake drop, where 5% of the total supply of Eigen is being released. And it's being released in kind of like 2 phases. So there's the phase 1 that we talked about, and then kind of the phase 2. And that's 5% of a total of 15% of the supply that is eventually going to be distributed, right? And now the tokens are locked. So you can't sort of go on Uniswap and do anything like that with it at this point in time. But there is some functionality for the Eigen token, which is in the Eigen ecosystem. That's where we've come so far, yes?
Yes, that's right.
Okay, perfect. So, Robert, could you tell us a bit more about what people can do with the Eigen token right now? So it's locked, but what sort of things can folks do with it?
So I should clarify one thing, because we did the announcement today. People can go to the claims page and they can check on, making sure that they are there. There's, an escalation process. There's Discord and others where people go if they think there's errors and other stuff. So we have, a team ready to kind of resolve things like that. The actual claim date, when you will be doing the actual claiming, will be a week from Friday on May 10th.
Got it. So people can't claim today, but they can check to see if an address is eligible.
Yes, that's right. You can check that your address is eligible. If it's eligible, that means it's in phase 1. If you did activity and it was in one of those protocols, if you look through the FAQ, there's a list of contract addresses, and those protocols are going to be included in phase 2. So there's information there, and we'll update things as we go. But yeah, it's also, the other part, which is just to keep in mind for a lock drop, it's not a rush. It's open for 120 days.
Cool.
If you came back in and you looked at it later, you would claim. There would be no difference. The only thing that is good about coming in early and claiming after May 10th is you can go ahead and you can stake and delegate your eigens to operators and AVSs, which is a positive action to take in the system. So to answer your question, you'll get the tokens. If you do, nothing with them, which we hope people won't, you can just leave them inside of your wallet. They're non-transferable. During the claiming process, there's the option in the UX, it's on the normal pathway, which will take you into the into the delegating to an operator, and the operators list AVSs and others. So you can actually participate in doing security now for the Eigenlayer system. And you'll have the option to do that as well with your ETH. So those are the main things that are happening. It's sort of the first step into the protocol getting, fleshed out. It is functional. So like at this point, this is securing EigenDA, and this is allowing the first AVSs that are using EigenDA to, have the crypto economic security with them. And then over time, there'll be more features. We mentioned in there on like things that we're doing and looking for, which, we want to see as we increase decentralization, of course, is going to be the crypto economic payment slashing system. And, occupying a lot of Sreeram's time, I know.
Okay, so Robert, at this point, people can see what they're eligible for, their address, but they can't do a claim yet. After May 10th, they will be able to do a claim, and then once they claim, they will be able to actually delegate then through the governance process and the AVS, and they stake to different AVSs at that point in time. Yes, and when they stake, what does that do? Just give us a refresher on what value that provides to the Eigen network, and why stake? What's the compelling reason to do this?
It's actually the whole reason for Eigenlayer to exist. So it's good for people to and I appreciate you guys have a platform where we can talk about it a little bit. The goal of Eigenlayer is to more general purpose, allow what used to be, you're going to create a new Ethereum or Filecoin or, some network, and you have to imbue together the idea of the software, get together people to run the network, and then figure out how you can create the crypto economic security to back it. So Eigenlayer is trying to make innovation incredibly easier than it had to be before, where you focus on the parts that really are the innovation, and you're not forced to have to create a new blockchain. You are able to actually implement what you wanted for your software. It's a very general thing that, blockchains themselves are just peer-to-peer networks of nodes that follow some kind of computer protocol, which is an API plus a time communication factor. And in Eigenlayer, you're able to take the security out of Ethereum and now also the Eigenlayer token itself, and you apply them towards somebody else's protocol. And it's very much like a reusable template that we've done this before for things like Bitcoin. We've done this when we participated in Ethereum. And now through the Eigenlayer, it's a launch board to be able to do this for every single AVS that comes onto Eigenlayer. They have a uniform interface for having what used to be spinning up an entire new chain and ecosystem.
Okay, so why are the when do the tokens become unlocked? So they're locked right now, but is there a date by which at some point in the future they become unlocked?
We have 3 things that we're looking for, and we're going to want to try to get through them quickly. One of them on the community side, it's really important. We dropped an intersubjective work token, And we're actually taking people back to basics, intersubjectivity. Oh God, I said it that time. And social consensus. These ideas have always been part of the core of the layer one blockchains. I think sometimes you have competitors to, like, for instance, Ethereum, that they look kind of like a blockchain, but at its core, it's a bunch of like completely permissioned people who own the network, and they might as well be like Amazon Web Services or something. It's very centralized. That's not social consensus, right? That's actually a centralized entity that's controlling things. Things like Ethereum and Bitcoin have always had this property that the social consensus was, this is the valid chain. We've had, attacks on chains like Bitcoin and Ethereum where you have ETH Classic or ETHW or, BCH, and they branch off, but people say, well, that's not actually the biggest one. This is the big one. And so the social consensus has been there before. And, allowing this to now be inside of what in the past would have been an ERC20 token that was just fungible, adding this capability to it, there's, I think, a lot of value for people to have some time to absorb it. You can read, there's going to be a lot of people who talk about what this means. It's going to get enhanced. Everybody has people that they trust a lot. You guys have a lot of viewers and readers who, will kind of look to you to explain to them, what does this really mean to bring forkability into a token rather than be part of the blockchain? And so it's good for people to understand that, because ultimately when the token goes fully unlocked, at that point, there's a lot on stake for people, and they should really understand what this means. It shouldn't be something that like, hey, this thing's out there, it's unlocked. Hopefully you'll figure it out. We want there to be a period of like learning and just acclimation, and everybody to kind of understand, if this is right for them.
So, Robert, are you saying right now there's not an unlock date per se? Some of these ideas have to propagate, or like back to the people who are wondering, like at what date? Is there a concrete date by which this unlocks, or is there some kind of an estimate?
Yeah, I mean, they're non-binary. Like that first one, there's going to be a wave. You're never like it. This, we want there to be some time, but it's not going to be waiting around for years, and anywhere close to that. The second factor is probably an important one, which is payments and slashing. So having the token crypto economics, happening programmatically on chain, that's very important. People would like to actually see how the system works. Right now, you can imagine, what does it look like for an AVS to be paying for security? How does an operator process those? How do the restakers get the value from it? And so in principle, you see how it works, but the actual system is important to have live and working. We've seen this before, like, for instance, the Flashbots ecosystem. It takes a little while to figure out what are the roles of people who are builders and relayers and proposers. And, these roles have a different place in our case, because we're actually we're not doing block building, but we're actually doing security building for a protocol. So there's a component of making sure that people know what they're getting. So if you're actually in our ecosystem and the token is unlocked, you would like to have people have that information accessible. They're not waiting and saying, "Oh, I hope it comes out the way I'd like it to be." You should be able to just read it and see that it's done.
Okay, and I think I heard in this maybe months, not years, would be sort of an estimate of when unlocked.
Yeah, yes? I mean, there's been a lot of work on it already. We can't say for sure exactly when. There's some people that we're working with, of course. There's a lot of really good, robust incentive type researchers around Ethereum, Eigenlayers, like borrowing a lot of the best ideas that we can get from it. But we'll have more updates as we're getting closer. We have a forum up, and the intersubjective work token is already there. There's like more work that we can do now at the foundation. It's been around for a while behind the scenes, but now we're actually going to be public and out there as well. So so if you're following us, you'll start getting a better feeling for how the progress is coming along.
Okay, so it sounds like the answer here is just like there's some actual technical infrastructure that needs to get built in order for the actual token to get unlocked, and then also there needs to be some sort of just like community understanding. There needs to be more conversations about what an intersubjective work token actually is, and then who are the players in the game. And so one part in the hands of the community, one part in the hands of like actual infrastructure devs on the Eigen side, right?
Yep. And then the third part that's important is, we So Sreeram and the team, made the decision. This is going in the path of progressive decentralization. So the foundation was formed a while back. We were doing work in order to get ourselves ready for this point. And so we were able to launch the token. Token is launched out of the foundation. The Stakedrop is also out of the foundation. And so over time, we're going to get more and more progressively decentralized. So, we know what that means. The community is going to get more involved. They're going to have more input. Already over, I'd say, the next month, there's going to be opportunities for people who are, more technical or more on the business side or others, things to get involved. It's been, very, I'd say, very thankful and appreciative that there's been a lot of interest in people who believe and understand that restaking is the way for the capability of blockchains, and especially Ethereum, to scale out in very novel ways. And going forward, we'll have a lot more opportunities for people to participate in the discussion beyond that, important but simpler thing in the beginning, which was us getting the initial TVL into the system.
Sreeram, I want to bring you in here as the information theory expert here about intersubjective forking. Can you talk about just like the increased scope of what the contract system around the Eigen token, what this whole system of intersubjective forking, what this unlocks for Eigenlayer? Like, what does Eigenlayer do? It provides security to AVSs, but what new frontier has the Eigen token unlocked for the Eigenlayer system?
Really, the rest of the things are really supporting this particular thing, which is that how do we enable more people to build new actively validated services on top of Eigenlayer? So you start from there, and as some of you know here, we are building ourselves. Eigen Labs is building ourselves the first AVS on top of Eigenlayer, Eigen DA. Mm-hmm. It's a very useful example to think about and understand how and why we had to come up with the intersubjective forking token. What is the data availability system? You need a bunch of nodes to download and serve data to any participant who is actually interested in downloading the data. So this is what a data availability system is intending to provide. And as we were designing the Eigen DA system, one thing that became very clear is there are certain kinds of faults which are provable on Ethereum, on the blockchain, and certain kinds of faults which are not provable on the Ethereum blockchain. Like, for example, we had this idea, which is building on the Ethereum researchers, Dankrad and Justin Drake, on proof of custody, which is a mechanism which you can prove on chain that you're storing the data, because you have knowledge of your private secret, but also knowledge of that particular block. So it's a kind of like a zero knowledge proof that you are actually holding. The person who has knowledge of the private key also has knowledge of the block. So this can be proven, but what cannot be proven is that the person is serving this data to the users who really want it. Right? Imagine an optimistic rollup. An optimistic rollup only works if any potential challenger, can get access to the data that the rollup is publishing. And it is possible that all the EigenDA nodes collude and never serve data to anybody. This is not a fault that can be observed on the Ethereum blockchain. But so you take the Ethereum's point of view, and you sit there inside Ethereum and you look at, hey, do I know what has data been withheld? And you can't know, because Ethereum does not know whether the EigenDA nodes are serving the data to Ryan and David and Robert. But from the outside, no user, if all the EigenDA nodes colluded and said that this block has been published but never released the data to anybody, no RPC node will be able to serve it. If you run a full node, you will not be able to download the block. If you run a light node, you will not be able to get the few chunks that you are asking for. All of these give rise to intersubjective agreement. From the outside, any two individuals can agree that the data has been withheld, even though Ethereum as a blockchain cannot know that data has been withheld. Data withholding is a great example of an intersubjective fault, where Ethereum as a blockchain cannot know whether data has been served and propagated to everybody in the world, whereas from the outside, observers know very well that, hey, I'm trying to access the peer-to-peer network, I can't get it. I go to RPC nodes, I can't get it. I'm running a full node, I can't get it. I'm running a light node, I can't get it. Therefore, I know that the data is not available.
So Sreeram, really quick, I'm with you so far, right? And I can understand why this is a bad thing. Eigenlayer nodes withholding data is not fulfilling their duty of an Eigenlayer node. Just a quick side quest though is like, why would they do that? Like we would call that like corruption. Like what sort of things? Like I can't. I'm having a hard time off the top of my head imagining a scenario why would they do that? Don't they like Eigen network? Is there some sort of reason that comes to mind of why they would turn corrupt and go evil in this way?
That's a great question. When we're building these blockchain systems, we want to protect against all kinds of, nuclear events. And a nuclear event here that one would be worried about is all the eigenlayer validators coming together and saying, hey, let's just attack the system. Why would they attack the system by withholding data? Because there may be an optimistic rollup, let's say they're involved in. And if in this optimistic rollup, I actually make a invalid claim on Ethereum by publishing data to EigenDA and then getting my fraudulent state passed because nobody can challenge because nobody knows what the heck is going on, and I can now steal money. So we are obviously always worried about the absolute worst case. So this requires a heavy amount of collusion, right? All the operators have to be in cahoots because a small fraction of operators can still serve the data. But they are all colluding. They're colluding with the rollup sequencer, and they're all in it together to actually steal money from a rollup. And that would be an example of why they do it.
Okay, so if that happens, basically, your validator set, your kind of like node set turns evil, they get corrupt. For a lot of chains, a lot of consensus systems, that's kind of like game over. It's like reset time, like, oh, the system's dead, like it's corrupted, right? It no longer works. But I think where you're getting to is intersubjective forking means that there's still a path, even in that failure mode situation. Yes?
That is correct. Exactly. So this is again comes from deep in the Ethereum research culture that we want to build for World War III as we call it in Ethereum. But the idea being that what kind of systems can withstand all these complex attacks, and people some people might say, oh, why are you worried about such adversarial scenarios? Because when we think about blockchains, we don't think about blockchains as toys that we're playing with for today. It is the kind of rails on which human coordination can be built. And if you want to build a system to that grade, you need to make sure that it can withstand these kinds of faults. And in this case, what will happen is, because a majority of the eigen stakers have colluded and done this malicious thing of withholding data, the token can be forked, and somebody can raise a challenge and say that, hey, this is not the right token because these eigen stakers did something bad, and create another version of the token where those particular stakers, their stake is removed, and the new token now just removes those guys' stake, and then everybody else still has their stake. And what this does is this creates a concrete penalty for these mafia from actually going and taking their gains and running away. Instead, you have this alternative token that from the outside we can all agree that the alternative token is the right token, because everybody knows that an attack has happened, and because of that we all know, everybody now coheres onto the second forked token. Because now we all agree on this forked token, that token is what is imbued with value. So when we think about what is an intersubjective agreement, I think the simplest thing to think about is all value is intersubjective. Like, why is Bitcoin valuable? Why is this token valuable? A particular meme coin valuable, but a fork of that meme coin is not valuable, right? All of this comes from intersubjective agreement. We all look at it and say, oh yeah, this is the right one, let's invest. And it is a sum total of all individual free choice that creates value in one token versus the other token. And similarly here, what's happening is the Eigen token system can create this fork, and by creating a challenger can create this fork, And by creating this fork, they're actually saying, throwing the gauntlet to everybody, saying, hey, this is the right token. Now, all of you shift your reference to this token. And so the normal problem with just doing it on a regular ERC20 token is the original token is now being traded. It is now locked in exchanges, dexes, all these places. And you suddenly go and like rug the guys and say that other token is valuable. What happened to the guys who were trading this token? What happened to the exchanges? Like, it's chaos and melee if you just do it on a random ERC20 token. The Eigen system not only pre-anticipates this as a behavior, it sets it up that this is the correct expected behavior. When people collude and create malicious actions, they need to be held to task. They need to be actually punished, and the system itself is designed so that's why we have this two token model where one token can be used in a way that is fork unaware. Like, you don't need to know anything about, oh my God, this Eigen token's too complicated, there are forks and all this stuff. You don't need to do any of that. You're just like, hey, this is an Eigen token, just use it like any other token. What it does is there's another token which can fork. It's a different frame of reference, and we call it B Eigen, backing Eigen. So the one that's actually backing it with real value, and that can fork. And if you hold this like other token, you should be able to claim one each in each of these forks. So you are protected against forking. If you are not, staking and being malicious, you're kind of protected. So that's the kind of high level idea.
I get it. That's very cool. So the net gain is it makes Eigenlayer and kind of like the validator node set of Eigenlayer nodes more corruption resistant, right? Because there can always be this like fork that happens, and that's all embedded in the protocol. So it's like one example of something that wasn't intersubjective fork was like Ethereum Classic, like branching from Ethereum. And for people who are like remember back then, how messy was that? The like consensus had to be reformed. There was like wars and tribes and all of this messiness. Eigenlayer just kind of handles a revolt against the validator set in protocol and relatively seamlessly, right? So if any kind of dictator or cabal comes to power, like there's a revolution sort of like baked into the protocol, so you could just kind of fork out. And even having that mechanism there will make it probably less, I mean, you're the game theory guy, that would make it less likely for such a cabal and corruption to form in the first place.
That is correct. So, so this core idea, I think David mentioned earlier that this was from Augur and actually from some of Vitalik's blog posts, and even earlier from an idea called TruthCoin, which was a forking version of Futarchy. So there's a kind of like a history to this, in the blockchain space. But a few things had to be resolved to actually make our version of this universal intersubjective work token. I'd say there are four major things we had to solve to actually get it to the point where it's usable in this way. Number one is universality. Universality is that it is usable across not just one particular application. Like Augur was designed for one particular application. And because it's designed for one particular application, it uses application-specific semantics. For example, Augur measures how many bets are outstanding. And then you know that that's the cryptoeconomic surface area that is open. And it uses that to create an economic mechanism that makes sure that the system works. And when you're doing it universally, you don't know what is happening. Like somebody is using an Eigen Oracle in a betting market, they're using it here and there, and like God knows where else. So when we want to make it universal, we need to have a solicitation mechanism which is universal, which is that it somehow needs to understand what is the total cryptoeconomic risk without being application specific. Okay, so that's a big thing we had to do to actually make Eigenlayer work. There is another aspect to universality, which is, we think of these intersubjective systems as happening in two phases. We call it a setup phase and an execution phase. And the reason I think it's important to mention this is whenever people think social consensus, they think of, hey, we all get into a Discord or hash it out in in a room. But that's really not what we mean by intersubjective forking. What we mean by it is there is a setup phase where the conditions of what needs to happen are pre-specified. For example, this token forks for, false in EigenDA. Let's say that's the setup phase. Or in the Augur case, this token will fork for errors in the prediction market. That is the setup phase. Now, in the execution phase, anybody can self-evaluate whether they need the fork one is the right thing or the other one is the right thing. It's kind of like having a fork choice rule built in to a protocol. Like in Bitcoin, you say the longest chain is the right chain. Somebody can create a forked block, but if it's not part of the longest chain, you're going to reject it. You don't need to call anybody else to know that I need to reject that other block. The longest chain rule already tells you that you go with the longest chain, and anybody else who's going with the longest chain is already in sync, in consensus. And so this segregation into the setup phase and the execution phase. So Eigen token itself has a setup phase, which is basically creating the shelling point that it is a universal intersubjective work token. So it will fork for intersubjective faults that stakers make on when you stake Eigen in Eigenlayer. And this is very important, because like we said, all value is intersubjective. It comes from our agreement. And if already the pre-agreement is that, if you stake and do this wrong thing, then you will get slashed and, the token will fork. We call this slashing by forking. And so if you already know this, then, like Ryan said, there's maybe no incentive for you to actually go and do this. But that's the first one, universality. We want to make this universal. It's usable across all these systems. You need to have a mechanism to know how much value is at risk. You also need to be able to fork for all these, in faults. The second one we call isolation, which is that a DeFi user should not have to know all these details about forking, and all the DeFi should be able to work nominally. Because otherwise, DeFi has to keep track of, is this the original token or the fork token, or how do we handle this split? So that becomes very messy. So the protocol has isolation, that's why it maintains two tokens, one token which doesn't need to fork, and the other token which can fork in the background. The third property we call metering, which is that what is the cost to create a fork? Because you're inducing a social cost whenever you create a fork. Like imagine we were callous about how we build this system. It'd say, everybody now, like for a meme reason, you create a fork and somebody else creates a fork, and it just goes unbounded complexity. And we want to keep forking rare and serious. How do we do that? We have a metering, which is that to create a fork, you need to burn a bunch of the Eigen token. Otherwise, you can't create a fork because you're serious. And why would you risk your Eigen token to create a fork? You burn the Eigen token in the original fork, but you don't burn your own token in the created fork because you believe that that's correct, and that's where everybody will converge. So you're not really losing anything. You will lose it only if you were wrong. So we call this commitment. So you have a binding commitment to actually go to another fork, and you need to have enough binding commitment to move to another fork. And this basically compensates for the cost of social consensus. You can think of the Eigen token as providing social consensus as a service. And so you need to have like a cost. Otherwise, people will abuse, by spam and various ways. There's just lots of like meme tokens, and then like who knows what is happening. So forking is considered to be a serious event. Mm-hmm. And it will happen only if somebody is willing enough to create the fork that they're willing to bet their life or a certain fraction of the token that the other fork is the one that's going to survive. As the third property we call metering. And then the fourth property, which is actually a striking property in crypto economics, we call compensation. Compensation is, imagine I use an oracle as a DeFi protocol, a lending protocol that relies on an oracle. If that oracle goes wrong due to the behavior of the stakers, then, normally, you're like, tough luck, move on, that bad things happen. Let's just move on and figure out what to do with it. But with the Eigen token, one of the things you do is you can have a mechanism to compensate an AVS for misbehavior, because we are taking the bad guy's tokens and burning it. Instead of burning all of it, a portion of it can be redistributed to the AVS, and there is a mechanism to redistribute tokens. So these are all the new dimensions that are opened up with the Eigen token, and that's why we are like, okay, now we are ready to actually talk about this universal intersubjective.
I'm laughing because people came for the airdrop, and we're finishing this episode with a masterclass on crypto economics, and that was both geeky and incredibly cool and incredibly ambitious, I would say, and I think shows a lot of foresight into the seriousness of how you guys are designing Eigenlayer to sort of plan for complete corruption of the node set and still have a failover strategy for that too. So very cool. Is there a whole white paper on that, Sreeram, if people are like interested in exploring how you set up the intersubjective forking functionality?
Absolutely. The white paper is published on the Eigenlayer webpage. Its link is, we'll give you a link at the end of the talk, in the end of the chat. There is also a blog post. The paper is pretty dense and long. It's a 40 plus page paper, but there is a 5-page blog post, which is, a somewhat simplified version of what is going on in the white paper. Yeah, so we are looking forward to, and Robert mentioned, the few dimensions we were waiting for before transfer restrictions could be removed, and one of the first ones is community discussion. And one of the aspects of community discussion is some of the parameters, what fraction of eigen should be burnt in order to consider a fork, right? So there are some core parameters like this. How do you define a new AVS now inherits the forkability? Like, it's like a constitution, and like, edits to the constitution. What is the mechanism? Is it enough that you just stake in Eigenlayer? Does it have to be written somewhere? What is the mechanisms to modulate intersubjective forking? These are the few dimensions which we want to nail before we open the token to both forkability and transferability.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's really important. It would be, it would be possible to make some guesses at what are the right thing to do, but as we've seen with Ethereum and others, look at how much effort is put into the design parameters on 1559, or in thinking about going from 32 ETH validators to 1,000 plus ETH validators. And before that, right? There was like 1,000 shards and 64 shards, then one shard with rollups. These are, you need a lot of great minds, and even Vitalik in Ethereum has had many times they go down a path and they work for a while and then they have to figure out something else. So this is important enough to get a lot of people's input towards.
Yeah, and while that was kind of a lot, it's actually kind of simple at the same time. Once you've put all the pieces together, really a lot of this complexity stems from the fact that we want Eigen to be interoperable with DeFi, yet also have to this forking ability. And so like the base case of Eigen, actually kind of like the first class citizen, the main version of the token is actually the DeFi version of the token that people are generally familiar with. And then there's this like derivative, Sreeram called it backed Eigen, which is like this forking contract, which spawns two separate universes for people to choose which universe they want to go to, one which is the malicious attack and one is the non-malicious attack. And really, like, why is this happening? It's actually because Eigenlayer is increasing the scope of the things that it can provide security for inside of their AVS ecosystem. So it's just like kind of a natural byproduct of the nature of what Eigenlayer is and how we can build smart contracts today, and the fact that also people are also going to want to put their tokens into DeFi and do DeFi things with it. That's kind of my summary with this. There are some other like loose ends I think we still actually kind of need to tie off on this conversation. One is the Eigenlayer Foundation. So brand new organization. That's why, Robert, you're here on the show with us today, because you're the new director of the foundation. So what's the mandate of the foundation? Who is going to the foundation? Is this, are people from Eigen Labs going to go work for the foundation and leaving Eigen Labs? What's the roadmap for the Eigen Foundation? What's kind of the deal? Kind of give us the DNA of the Eigen Foundation.
Yeah, the foundation, it's brand new in terms of being public. It's been behind the scenes for a little while now. There's a lot of prep involved in the process of getting up to doing one of these types of transitions, from having a labs running an entire protocol to the labs making the trusted decision to start moving things over into the community. So that started happening from a while back now. The foundation is basically a new organization. So everything in Eigenlayer Eigen Labs, is staying in place. There's always a trade-off. Sometimes people make an option, they kind of roll a lot over. It's actually important that for two things. One is the execution. We all want Eigenlayer itself to move very quickly, and not disrupting the organization is a very critical step to that. And then the second is, this is a separate new organization. It has a different mandate. Eigenlayer Foundation is a shareholder-less nonprofit whose objective, and it would be violating its constitution, basically its articles of association, if it was doing anything other than spending all of its efforts to make the Eigenlayer protocol more successful. And so there's a set of kind of ideals in it. And it's a difference between, Eigenlayer Labs, which had to necessarily be an investor-based company. It had to have something that looks like a regular corporate structure. And then Eigenlayer Foundation, which is much more or really compatible with a community-focused environment. And a lot of communities form themselves around DAOs. There's many different structures. I mean, Ethereum Foundation doesn't even have a DAO. It doesn't have token voting. Yet still the foundation has those ideals. And so you see different versions of it. Optimism Foundation is a great example. Forums is like very much for public good and other things. And, our foundation is also public good, with the public good being how can we use social consensus to make blockchain and crypto security applicable to many more use cases other than people creating new layer 1, layer 2 chains, these types of first things. We want to project crypto security into a lot more of the technology world and business world. So the summary is, we're building, we are hiring quite a bit. On the announcements, there's some links to go to our web pages as well. For the most part, people have been coming in. There's a lot of people who are very interested, been in the space. If people are, engaged and want to do that, it's a fast growing organization. We've got a lot to cover. So happy to have that. And we do have a couple of people. We'll be putting out some announcements. Really excited about who joined our team as the chief governance officer and some others. So we'll kind of flesh it out some more, and there'll be more community participation even on our side. But yeah, really good question. Thank you. It is a whole new organization, and it's not, lab shifting over. It's a separate organization.
Okay. So just some straggling questions as we finish this conversation off. So people are probably wondering, points. Does anything happen to Eigenlayer points? Is there a points program continuing moving forward? Do you have any comments on this?
Yeah. So as far as like after March 15th was the cutoff date, and everything from that point on is still in the system. It's not part of this season, but it's all tracked, and it is nothing is going away. Nothing is like going to stop being considered going forward. We just had to pick a point in time and commit to it because there was quite a bit for us to do in preparation for getting to the stake drop. So that part is all set up for the future. The issue around restake points going forward, fundamentally today, we made, a big difference here, because now we know that users who are participating in Eigenlayer, the only thing to do has broadened out a lot more. Previously, you could put stake in and it was registered as being in the Eigenlayer system, but it wasn't actually contributing to the social consensus. Now people understand, what the system is. We started seeing it with the launch a couple of weeks ago, that the operators' ABSs are coming up. Now we see it with the Eigen token as well. And so after May 10th, there's going to be more attributable things that users can be doing that will signal that they are good ecosystem participants and they are helping the protocol. So we're not ready right now to say what that is, but we're working on getting that out communicated. It'll be available to people before they need to actually take action. So just follow along on Eigen Foundation on Twitter, Eigen Foundation. Eigenlayer will, I'm sure, refer over to them as well, so people who are following that account as well can see it. But yeah, no, there's definitely changes that are going to be coming, but nobody's going to get wiped out for what they've done. Everything is going to be counted as well since March 5th.
So some of the messaging for this conversation is today folks can go to the website and go check to see like how much their address might be eligible for, except, and this is a subset of Bankless listeners, people who live in the US are hit with a block, and other certain jurisdictions are hit with a block. And also not like I've heard tale on Twitter of VPN blocks as well. Is there anything you can say about that? I mean, we all know, Bankless listeners know, we are living in a difficult, let's say, regulatory regime these days. So I'm not sure to what extent you can comment on this, but like it is a concern. It is something top of mind for those folks looking to like participate in these networks. Do you have any comments on this?
Yeah, I mean, it's a difficult situation, like you're saying. It's not possible to operate in the space without, following regulatory guidelines and being responsible to that. And the challenging part is there's not a lot of clarity, and there is pretty strict guidance around what is possible to be done and not done in places like the U.S. So I don't think we're doing anything different. I think that's been the majority of tokens that have come out. The foundation itself is a non-U.S. entity, and so it's a non-U.S. Involved action, non-U.S. involved procedure, and that unfortunately for many other protocols that have come before that, you have to end up having these types of geographic restrictions as well as technology restrictions.
One thing I'll say to Bankless listeners, this is from me personally. If you're angry, go contact your Congress representative. Go contact your lawmakers. Get involved politically, because that's what it's going to take to sort of change some of these things.
Yeah, I'll get on my pedestal for a second as well, which is, we have a government. We actually, it is our government in the United States, especially. I assume you're kind of talking more about countries such as the US. And so, yeah, the voting system is, where we really get our voices in. Ultimately, I think a lot of us in the crypto space feel this way, that, for countries to not pay attention to those of us who are in this space and to not adjust, make the laws work for that, is just pushing innovation to other places. And it's actually putting countries at a deficit.
Yeah, sometimes, Robert, I wish we had an intersubjective fork in the U.S. that we could just kind of route to, but I don't know if that's baked in the Constitution. Yeah. So we got to work these things out socially.
I'm at a conference where there's a number of senators and others who are trying to push this forward. There are states that are a lot more aggressive about trying to represent the real interest. I think a lot of the laws we have, they were created at a time that it's very hard for them to anticipate the rapid pace of technology. So we need to just keep our voices, loud, speak up, and we know we can move things in the right direction.
Yeah, we're just tying off some loose ends here. I'm collecting some questions from people in the Bankless Nation Discord. There's like a whole different rabbit hole we could go down on, like a sizing philosophy for distributing a token to the community. There's like linear versus unlinear. There's like, do you give 8%, 10%, 15%? Eigenlayer is given 15%, which in my opinion, check me if I'm wrong, listeners, but 10% is kind of like what the industry standard has been, loosely give or take. Eigenlayer has chosen to do 15, but do you guys have any just directional philosophy thoughts about how you guys chose the parameters that you've chosen? I've been trying to solicit feedback from people, but everyone's got different opinions, and everyone's is all kind of conflicting with each other. So maybe just at a high level question, just philosophy on the parameters and how they were chosen and why.
Yeah, I think the general parameter that we have is we want to make sure that there's a meaningful participation early on from the whole community. And, we know in this case, we have a locked token, and there's still a lot of, a lot more that, we are looking at, making sure that we're able to kind of get people in and kind of reward people who are, paying attention and, would be good for, future participants in the community. So it's good for us to have a higher number. Obviously, there are people who might look and say, oh, we want to go to lower percentages or, pick this arbitrary one. I don't think it's zero sum. It's a very positive sum situation when it comes to airdrops. The main goal and, what we are, hoping over time is it's a very compelling protocol. As people see this token, as people start to understand this idea about creating social consensus as an API that can get attached more readily, it means we're going to increase the velocity. We'll be able to see much faster pace of new exciting protocols being built in the crypto space. And, having airdrops like this, it's an important tool for us to be able to decentralize. You have to actually get some people into the space through an airdrop who have not invested anything, right? They're just participating in your ecosystem. And, they're the kind of people who would be good to be part of the community and helping to do governance and other things. So, we definitely were trying to be at a number that would allow a lot of people to get in. So we'd have freedom. And so, we started off with this first season. But we know there's a lot of things like this season. We were taking a look at particular restakers who are in the earlier phases. There's a lot of other people in the space who are developers, who are doing other things in the community. So we need to make sure that we're able to, look for activities in other places as well in future seasons.
Well, congrats to the Eigen ecosystem on the Stakedrop. This is definitely another exciting milestone in what we've observed with Eigenlayer shipping so much, and kind of this whole narrative and idea around restaking has been really excited to go down the rabbit hole. So I have a question for each of you guys as we end. So want the foundation's perspective, and then want Eigen Labs' perspective. Is what's next? What's the most exciting next thing that you guys are looking forward to? Let's get Eigen Labs first. Sreeram.
Yeah, I think looking forward to unblocking some of the technical infrastructure like payments and slashing, getting them ready and going on mainnet. That would be the biggest thing we're looking at from labs.
How about you, Robert?
Yeah, I think the complement for that, the foundation, its goal is to serve the larger community, to be able to meaningfully get involved. And so what I'm really excited about is, as our foundation is, getting our feet planted, and we are able to communicate more with the community, allow more people to be involved in, some of the important research that needs to happen in community building, in getting people to be aware about this new opportunity to interact with crypto in a very different way, where you really think about it much more as like a software developer who understands what you want to get done. But, blockchain is something that's a much easier service for you to consume rather than having to, actually transition your whole application mindset over. So there's a lot of like Web 2 moving into Web 3. I dare say, everyone will be like, I'm saying AI. Everybody says AI. I think I'll say it because I know for somebody like me, I know Sreeram's in that case also. We've been big AI fans for, well over a decade because, we saw this coming. But, so Web 2 and things that are like the future direction of computing, getting things set around Eigenlayer so that we can support that. And I do say that very humbly, like, for Foundation, we're going to be assisting the whole community make this happen. And then Eigenlayer itself, for everybody who's, looking at it, it's a layer of infrastructure. It's a security layer of infrastructure, but there's a massive amount of value that anybody who's bringing applications or services in, will be able to get by utilizing it. And, it's a marketplace. It's not looking to be extractive, not going to be rent seeking. It's just providing service that is valuable and allows a lot more value to flow into crypto by real world use cases. So
exciting times. Robert, Sreeram, thank you so much for joining us today on Bankless.
Congrats, guys.
Thank you so
Bankless
much.
Nation, one thing to leave you with, of course, is be careful of scam links. There could be all sorts of, go to the official channels. We will include links in the show notes to those official channels. We can see the announcements, and you can see the links and all of those details. Got to remind you, of course, crypto is risky. You could lose what you put in, but we are frontier. It's not for everyone, but we're glad you're with us on the Bankless journey. Thanks a lot.
Mantle, formerly known as BitDAO, is the first DAO-led Web3 ecosystem, all built on top of Mantle's first core product, the Mantle Network, a brand new high-performance Ethereum Layer 2 built using the OP stack, but uses Eigenlayer's data availability solution instead of the expensive Ethereum Layer 1. Not only does this reduce Mantle Network's gas fees by 80%, but it also reduces gas fee volatility, providing a more stable foundation for Mantle's applications. The Mantle Treasury is one of the biggest DAO-owned treasuries, which is seeding an ecosystem of projects from all around the Web3 space for Mantle. Mantle already has sub-communities from around Web3 onboarded, like Game7 for Web3 gaming, and Bybit for TVL and liquidity and on-ramps. So if you want to build on the Mantle network, Mantle is offering a grants program that provides milestone-based funding to promising projects that help expand, secure, and decentralize Mantle. If you want to get started working with the first DAO-led Layer 2 ecosystem, check out Mantle at mantle.xyz and follow them on Twitter at 0xmantle. Arbitrum is the leading Ethereum scaling solution that is home to hundreds of decentralized applications. Arbitrum's technology allows you to interact with Ethereum at scale with low fees and faster transactions. Arbitrum has the leading DeFi ecosystem, strong infrastructure options, flourishing NFTs, and is quickly becoming the Web3 gaming hub. Explore the ecosystem at portal.arbitrum.io. Are you looking to permissionlessly launch your own Arbitrum Orbit chain? Arbitrum Orbit allows anyone to utilize Arbitrum's secure scaling technology to build your own Orbit chain, giving you access to interoperable, customizable permissions with dedicated throughput. Whether you're a developer, an enterprise, or a user, Arbitrum Orbit lets you take your project to new heights. All of these technologies leverage the security and decentralization of Ethereum. Experience Web3 development the way it was always meant to be: secure, fast, cheap, and friction-free. Visit arbitrum.io and get your journey started in one of the largest Ethereum communities. Celo is the mobile-first, EVM-compatible, carbon-negative blockchain built for the real world, driving real-world use cases like mobile payments and mobile DeFi. And with Opera MiniPay as one of the fastest-growing Web3 wallets, Celo is seeing a meteoric rise with over 300 million transactions and 1.5 million monthly active addresses. And now, Celo is looking to come home to Ethereum as a layer 2. Optimism, Polygon, Matter Labs, and Arbitrum have all thrown their hats in the ring for the Celo layer 2 to build upon their stacks. Why the competition? The Celo layer 2 will bring huge advantages like a decentralized sequencer, off-chain data availability secured by Ethereum validators, and one block finality. What does that all mean for you? With Celo layer 2, gas fees will stay low, and you can even pay for gas natively using ERC20 tokens, sending crypto to phone numbers across wallets using Social Connect. But Celo is a community-governed protocol. This means that Celo needs you to weigh in and make your voice heard. Join the conversation in the Celo forums. Follow Celo on Twitter and visit celo.org to shape the future of Ethereum. Welcome to Consensus 2024. Consensus is one of the biggest hubs for all things crypto, blockchain, and Web3. This May, Consensus is celebrating 10 years of decentralizing the future. Going to Consensus means being in good company with over 15,000 attendees from over 100 countries. You'll have the opportunity to learn directly from the architects and advocates representing Bitcoin, Ethereum, Solana, along with the teams from popular layer 2s like Mantle, Arbitrum, Optimism, Base, and others. But Consensus is more than just discussions and presentations. Badge holders get access to witness 10 professional karate combat fights and one unprofessional one between myself and Nick Carter. For the visionaries, PitchFest is your spotlight, presenting a stage for the most promising early-stage Web3 companies. And for the devs, the hackathon offers a unique chance to build your next project or take your existing project to the next level. Immerse yourself in hundreds of side events and hacker houses scattered around Austin. Register for Consensus 2024 today and save